How's it going, Exile? So welcome to my second iteration of the Spark Stormweaver, and now we have the Frozen Spark Stormweaver, which is just an amazing build. Quick disclaimer, I'm currently doing the tier 2 bosses because I still have to make a major pass on my gear, but now let's start with the showcase, and we're gonna start with tier 2 Xesht. So while you're watching this, the only thing I haven't figured out completely yet with this build is mana sustain during boss fights. As you can see, I'm completely out of mana, but I'm gonna have that fixed very soon, and then we're also gonna be very smooth on these bosses. Alright, let's go on with the all-dreaded Simulacrum. So this is a tier 2 Simulacrum, which is very hard content right now, and it takes a little while, obviously, but as you can see, we are going through that like a breeze. We are just standing in the middle. We can even like camp in the Mana Tempest all the time, and we just spam our Spark and everything around us keeps dying, and we barely have any issues with clearing this. You can see here the bosses are spawning. They cannot even jump on us because they get frozen just before they will even reach us, and now we just have to wait for our loot to drop and go on with the next. Next you see in here is Widowhail. So as you can see, you will not even see a mob spawning. They just die before they even receive a health bar, and we just stand in the middle in the Mana Tempest, spam our Spark and be happy. And yeah, just for reference, here's a random map boss. And last but not least, while I'm talking a little bit more about the build, here you're seeing like a random Delhi Breach map, and I can tell you all the other contents like Expedition or whatever you want to do are absolutely no problem with this build, and also the build is super duper budget friendly. You can make this build for less than a Divine, you can probably even make this build for like 10 to 20 Chaos. There's absolutely nothing in this build which is going to be expensive. However, if you want it to be expensive, you can scale it up as high as you want. So I'm gonna do a very brief explanation on what drives this build now, so if you want to skip ahead, make sure to check the description down below. We have links to all the sections of this guide, we have links to the itemization, we're gonna explain how the Widowhail works. I have a big section on how to craft your Quiver on a budget if you don't have a lot of currency, or also how to craft it if you have a lot of currency. And at the end we have the full Simulacrum, the last couple of waves, the full tier 2 Xesht as a showcase. And of course, as always, we're gonna have all the trade links and the planner and the PoE in the description down below. So let's get started with the brief explanation here. So, in 0.3 we got a new support gem which is called Projectile Acceleration 3. And what this gem does, it gives you 40% more projectile speed, but more importantly, it also applies all the projectile speed modifications to your projectile damage. So if you have 500% projectile speed, you're gonna get 500% projectile damage as well. Now it's very handy that we can use the Widowhail bow, which gives us up to 305% increase bonus from our equipped Quiver. Now that doesn't sound very good, but if you look at our Quiver, it actually has a lot of great stats. It has projectile speed, which we just talked about, it has level of all projectile skills, and it also has another desecrated modifier, it has mana on kill, it has dexterity, and on top of it we can also corrupt it to make it even stronger, which is something we're going to talk about later. So that gives us an insane amount of projectile speed and projectile damage and skill levels for our Spark. But we also have our Arc on cast on Elemental Ailment, and our Arc luckily is a projectile skill too, so it gets exactly the same bonus. And you might have noticed cast on Elemental Ailment only gives 1 energy per shock and 1 energy per ignite, but 10 energy per freeze. And as you can see in this build, we're freezing everything instantly, which makes our Arc proc like crazy. But how do we freeze everything so fast with a Spark build? Well, we basically just use the Call of the Brotherhood ring, which converts all our lightning damage to cold damage, and then we just pick up a bunch of freeze node from our passive tree. But since with Stormweaver, we don't want to lose the effect of shock, because converting our lightning damage to cold damage would lose our shock. Luckily, we have an ascendancy to fix that for us, so we can still take the full benefit of shock while also having the full benefit of freeze, so that makes this build synergize very well and overall just play incredibly satisfying. So that was the quick rundown of the build. I hope you like it. I highly recommend to subscribe to the channel if you want to see updates and also like the video. It really helps me a lot. Also, make sure to leave a comment if you have suggestions or have questions, or also tune in to my stream and I can answer your questions live. So now, without further ado, let's go into the detailed guide and we're going to start with the skill gems. Alright, let's look at the skills. So first of all, we have Sigil of Power here, which is just on our weapon swap with Prolonged Duration, Magnified Area, and Cooldown Recovery. Then we have Spark, which is our main skill. So Spark, basically, I play with Considered Casting, Rising Tempest, Efficiency 2, because it's just too mana hungry, I cannot fix it any other way. Then Projectile Acceleration 3, this is very important. This double dips with our Quiver, I'm going to talk about a little bit later. And Prolonged Duration 2, because the longer the projectiles last, the more often they hit the mobs, the more damage they do. So why am I playing Rising Tempest and not Controlled Destruction? That's basically because I play a 12% chance to gain a Can't Surge when you deal a critical hit on my gloves. I don't get this proc too much now, so it's probably just up like 50% of the time, depending on the number of mobs which are on the map. But if I could get up like some extra critical strike chance, I'm pretty sure this can be up 100% of the time. But just saying, so if you use Rising Tempest, it's always going to be at least 24%, because you're always going to cast Frostbomb on cooldown, so it's always going to be 24%. And you know, sometimes if you cast Elemental Weakness, that actually counts as all 3, so then it's even going to be 36%, so I think this is a very nice support gem here. Then next we have Frostbomb. Frostbomb we really only use for exposure and for charge generation, so for infusion generation. So we have Short Fuse 2, we have Cooldown Recovery 2, we have Spell Echo, and we have Overabundance 2. So with especially the Short Fuse 2, it basically explodes instantly. So if you're running around, you basically just have to put it like, you know, briefly in front of you to just pick up the infusions instantly. Then next we have Orb of Storms. So Orb of Storms, I don't know how much I'm using it actually. I think I should use it way more. If you're like cruising, you can always do like this, right? You just press the Frost Orb once, Orb of Storms twice, and then you just go on like pressing Q. But I don't think I use it enough. In bosses, this is very important because this is generating your lightning charges. But yeah, so I still have to figure out how much I want to use Orb of Storms and how much I don't want to use Orb of Storms. So we played with Overabundance 2, considered casting, lightning mastery, and controlled destruction. So we definitely use this to do damage. We don't need this for charge generation because our main damage comes from the cold charge anyway. Then we have Elemental Weakness, not much to say about that. We have it with Heightened Curse, we have it with Prolonged Duration, we have it with Cursed Ground, obviously, so we can cast it on the bosses or also, you know, in the stationary fights. That's very useful, especially in Simulacrum. And we have Magnified Area 2. Then Lightning Conduit, honestly, I never use it, but sometimes you can use it on very strong rares, which are, you know, lurking around on the maps, but I basically never use it. But if you want to use it, you have 2 very strong shocks, so this is basically going to insta-gib all the rares if you use it properly. I just personally don't like it because it has such a long cast time, so this is definitely personal preference. I really very rarely use this, but if you want to use it, it's with Considered Casting, again Rising Tempest, then we have Controlled Destruction, and I have Elemental Focus, so it basically just does the maximum raw damage here. Then Mana Tempest, we use it while cruising. With the 20% quality, it lasts 2 seconds longer, so you basically want to always cast this like every 2 or 3 seconds. If the map is easy, you don't have to cast this at all, but if the map is rough, like if it's delirious and, you know, the mobs have a little bit more HP, you want to do this because this makes your projectiles basically chain and split and whatever and do like a bunch of more damage. And in stationary encounters like Simulacrum, you can even stay in this all the time. You will see that in the footage because you're just gonna regenerate so much mana from killing mobs. But yeah, I basically played with efficiency, so it has less cost. I played with Lightning Mastery for just, you know, random. And mobility, because I cast it while moving, and this is pretty much the only decent gem I can even put into this. But then Siphon Elements, make sure to put 20% quality on this. This is very important. This is mainly generating our cold infusions when we freeze enemies. Basically, it pops cold infusions all the time. Then we have Cast on Elemental Ailment, which we trigger with our Freeze, and we're gonna play it with Arc, because Arc also is a projectile skill and takes all the bonus from our projectile speed, Widowhail stuff whatsoever. We played with Rising Tempest, also the Projectile Acceleration 3 here, because we also want the full bonus in our Arc, Considered Casting, and Boundless Energy for the skill to have more energy. And then last but not least, we have Convalescence, which is just our oh shit button if we want to regenerate some more energy shield. So if you don't need Convalescence or you're bossing or whatever, or you are on a budget and you cannot fix your mana, highly recommend you can use Mana Remnants with Harmonic Remnants too. So this is going to fix all your mana issues for you whatsoever. It's going to create so many remnants, you're just going to be on full mana all the time. However, Convalescence is here the more defensive options. And that was it about the skill gems. In this video we have a section about weapon swap, because weapon swap is very important in this build since we only have projectile skills in our main hand, so we have to, you know, put certain skills on our weapon swap here to make them more efficient, and we're gonna do that in the next section. So I want to quickly talk about weapon swap because it's very important for this build. Because since we play Widowhail and a Quiver, we only have projectile skills in our main setup. We don't have spell skills. So that basically means we can only use projectile skills in our main hand to make damage. The other skills, like for example Lightning Conduit or Orb of Storms, in our main hand are not going to do any damage because they're not projectile skills and they're just going to be missing like 7 skills from your weapon set. So if you look at this, basically, you know, we have a classic weapon swap. Obviously, Sigil of Power will always be our weapon swap because it's on set 2. Spark is on our weapon set 1 because it's a projectile skill. Then we have Frostbomb here, which is on our weapon set 2 because, you know, this basically has like, you know, prolonged duration and exposure stuff. So this is basically just a buff skill, not a damaging skill. Then we have Orb of Storms, which we actually use as a damaging skill. So this one also has to go on your weapon set 2 and not on your weapon set 1. Because in our weapon set 2, we have a stuff with 6 lightning skills, a lot of spell damage, you know, a lot of convert to cold damage. So this actually adds a bunch of extra damage to the weapon set 2 skills, and these stuffs are pretty cheap to pick up, to be honest. The 20% damage as lightning, I still have to change to cold, by the way. That's like an old modifier. But you get the idea. So Orb of Storms gets level 25 in weapon set 2. But in weapon set 1, it just has level 19. So same goes obviously for something like Elemental Weakness, right? We have to put it in weapon set 2. Obviously we do it because it's our curse set anyway, but it's going to have much more skills in weapon set 2. So now it gets interesting. If you want to use Lightning Conduit on weapon set 1, it's not going to do any damage because this is not a projectile skill. But if you put it on your weapon set 2, it all of a sudden gets the lightning skills and it does much more damage then. That's pretty much all about them because we can still play Arc in weapon set 1 because Arc, luckily for us, is now a projectile skill, so it gets the full bonus from the Widowhail. So just quick recap here, put the damaging skills, which are projectiles, on your weapon 1 and put pretty much all other spells on weapon set 2. And try to get a stuff which is buffing your other skills and has a lot of cast speed because you want to have the cast speed while swapping. Otherwise, it's going to feel very slow. So having a stuff with a lot of cast speed can definitely help here. You could also, instead of the added lightning damage, put skill speed, for example, or cast speed into this stuff. So let's take a look at the passive tree. So we take the Shaper of Storms here, so we can shock, because the Call of the Brotherhood is going to convert all our lightning damage to cold damage, so that will make us unable to shock. So we need this Shaper of Storms here to fix that. And we also have Refracted Infusion here to just get like some more cold infusions whenever we do lightning infusions. As you can see, like I recorded all this without even having my last Ascendancy unlocked yet. So you will get Storm's Recollection. That's going to make your bossing so much more easy. You're going to have much more remnants, much more burst, and also much more mana. So this would be your force skill here. Then we just go over with some spell damage. Then I'm preferring the cast speed here for now because cast speed is very important. This build is crazy cast speed hungry. And then we, you know, take some energy shield nodes here and here. We get the mana efficiency nodes here. And then we move over to get all these freeze nodes. This one here is very nice. It has increased freeze build up and also 25% extra damage against frozen enemies. Then we have the int and energy shield at the top. We pick up the skill effect duration nodes here. Skill effect duration is very important for Spark, so we can hit mobs more often with a single Spark projectile. We get the cast speed here because the build is crazy cast speed hungry. And then we have one from nothing here for CI. So this is not a requirement, but it's a nice slot here. It was not so expensive. I think it was like 60 exalts. You absolutely don't have to get this. It will work just fine without, but you're saving a few nodes, and you can get like some defensive nodes, like all these ailment nodes here, which are pretty nice. You can get this 10% mana cost efficiently and 40% increased damage for our arc. Then you can get these freeze nodes here, which is very nice. You can get this skill effect duration node, which is very nice. And you can also get more freeze build up. And this is also very nice because hits ignore non-negative elemental resistances of frozen enemies. So enemies are pretty much always going to be frozen. So you don't need any penetration or anything. This node is going to handle it for you. And you could also get this 11% damage as extra chaos if you have an extra point. Then we have down here, this is just, you know, straightforward value elemental damage nodes. We always chill and shock. We have the cast speed nodes here, which are pretty decent. This one has dex int cast speed. This one has mana regeneration cast speed. So highly recommend picking these up. And this is weapon set. We're going to talk about this a little later. Here's even more value elemental damage nodes. So these are all value elemental damage and chance to shock and freeze build up. And last but not least, we go down here. Here's the from nothing, by the way. So let's talk about the weapon sets here real quick. So you want to have a specific weapon set because we are going to have certain damage from weapon set 2, which does not work in weapon set 1 and vice versa. So everything we can put in our weapon set 1 is shock, because shock is going to work regardless of our weapon type. So as you can see, here's shock. Then projectile stuff, because projectile stuff only works in our weapon set 1. This doesn't work in our weapon set 2, since our weapon set 2 doesn't even have our Widowhail Quiver, right? So this doesn't work at all in our weapon set 2. So all the projectile stuff has to be in weapon set 1. As you can see, like the effect of Quiver is in weapon set 1. Also here the effect for the Quiver is in weapon set 1. Because, you know, we don't even have the Quiver in weapon set 2. So we have to put this in weapon set 1. And last but not least, we pass down here to the shock node for weapon set 1. And for weapon set 2, it's pretty standard curse stuff. So we have the exposure here. We have the curse nodes here. And we have the curse nodes here. And then we have the last curse magnitudes here. So overall, this is the skill tree. Next section, we're going to talk about the jewels. Let's talk about the jewels. So we need some jewels which give us increased bonus from equipped Quiver to reach our 350% or maybe even 300% depending on your budget breakpoint. So you can also check this in the Widowhail section. But basically you want to just use these green ones here which have magnitude of shock or better magnitude of ailments. Magnitude of ailments is better because it also works for freeze or chill. But basically, you most important, you want to have 6 or 5% increased bonus from equipped Quiver to get a total of 350%, and that's why I'm using 2 jewels. So you want to have as little of those green ones as possible, because the green ones are not as good as the blue ones. Then for the other jewels, you want to use blue ones with skill effect, duration, magnitude of shock or ailments, and, you know, maximum energy shield, and you can also have like another damage stat. But these 3 stats seems to be relatively easy to obtain, and I like the increased energy shield on jewels actually. And I have this on all the jewels. You can also get cast speed if you want, but I would recommend skill effect, duration, magnitude of shock or ailments, and increased maximum energy shield. So that's what we're using on these jewels. And then last but not least, I have this from nothing. We already talked about this in the skill tree section to get this value cluster here. I expect this to rise in price. So if you can pick this up early when watching this video, it's probably going to be way more expensive after I post this video here. For the Anoint, if you have mana problems, I highly recommend getting Conservative Casting. It's super cheap and very, very efficient. You can also obviously pick this up since it's right on our tree, but I just basically pick this as an emergency fix. Another great Anoint for this is Heavy Ammunition. It's also very cheap. It gives a lot of projectile damage and projectile stun build up, which is actually quite nice to also stun enemies. Another good option if you want, or if you don't have the points to go all down here, is Frazzled. This gives like magnitude of shock and mana regeneration. It's also relatively cheap of an Anoint. So this is like the 3 Anoints I would recommend for this build. So let's look at the item. We're going to do this in 3 sections this time. So basically I'm going to talk about the armor pieces and everything first, and then after that, I have a section for the Widowhail, which is short, and I have a section on the Quiver and how to obtain this Quiver, which is a little bit longer. So I highly recommend you watch all of these. So let's start with the armor pieces here. So first of all, I'm getting a high ES helmet here, and you can obviously just push your ES. I feel like I don't need as much energy shield right now. I'm still cruising, and that's why I have skill effect, duration, and cooldown recovery here from the soul cores. But this is definitely not a requirement, but it makes your build a little bit more fluent, and skill effect duration directly scales the damage from your spark here. Then we have a chest piece. I want to switch from a spirit chest to like a 1000 ES chest, but I haven't done it yet. So basically what I'm doing is in my Widowhail right now, I have skill speed. I want to switch these to spirit, and then I want to swap out my chest to have much more energy shield. You can obviously use a chest with spirit, it's just fine. But getting a high ES chest is probably the best for this build, because there's just mobs here out there which do like crazy one-shots all the time, right? Then we have our amulet. I have it with conservative casting here because I just need crazy high mana cost efficient and mana regeneration because the build is just so mana hungry. I just have a 15 implicit spirit here. I try to get a lot of energy shield and projectile skills, and cast speed is the most important here on all your items. You want to have cast speed on all items possible because we naturally don't have cast speed in our main hand and offhand, which makes the build a little bit slow. So you want to try to pick up cast speed on all of your items. If you don't have the cash for this, you know, you can pick up one with +1 just fine. It's not going to decrease your damage by a whole lot. Then for your one ring, which is not unique, you want to have as much cast speed as possible. I happen to buy this one here for cheap, and it had like the cast speed, and then I desecrated it for another 6% skill speed, which is awesome. This is not really required, but I would aim for like a 28% plus cast speed ring here with some resistances. Mana is always nice, the other stuff is all bonus. Then we have the Call of the Brotherhood. This is very important. We need it to make this build work. So I have one with like chaos resisted implicit. You don't need this at all. I'm also like considering to just change this to one which is which uses a catalyst with more mana regeneration, because you can get up to like I think 45% mana regeneration on this one, and I feel like it's much better than just having the 16% chaos resistance, because I can fix that like in other ways. For boots, nothing special, you know. I'm just having random boots. I even have mana regeneration in here, fixing some resistances. So really just, you know, get some energy shield, fix some resistances. Same for belt. It's really just for fixing resistances. Mana is nice to have on, you know, all pieces, but mainly to fix your resistances. And for the gloves, again, mine are not pretty good, to be honest, but it's, again, fixing resistances. If you have max mana on the pieces, it's much better. I have to still make a pass on my armor pieces to get them all with mana to, you know, get rid of my mana problems. But you can get the 12% chance to gain Arcane Surge when you crit, which is a desecrated mod. So this, right now with my crit chance, gives me like, you know, Arcane Surge like half of the time, which is nice because it scales cast speed and mana regeneration. If I would pick up some more critical hit chance, I could probably have this up almost all the time. Unfortunately, Arcane Surge is only 4 seconds, but I still think this is a very nice mod because the suffix on the gloves is really not so important for us in this build. And for Flask, you know, just random life flask. For mana flask, if you have mana problems, I recommend to get like a big covered with increased charges. It really helps in boss fights. So that's kind of the thing here. And then we have the weapon swap. So weapon swap, try to get, you know, chiming stuff with either lightning skills or spell skills. Lightning skills tends to be much cheaper. Increased cast speed, get as much as possible because you're using this on weapon swap quite a bit, and the cast speed will, you know, pay into it. Then you can try to get a lot of spell damage and conversion to cold. And, you know, the runes in here are probably just wrong. I should probably just switch these to cast speed here to just have even faster cast when I switch my weapons. And that's the gear except for the Widowhail and the Quiver. So we're going to talk about Widowhail and Quiver in the next section. So let's talk about the Widowhail first. So the Widowhail basically increases your Quiver stats, which mainly scales your, you know, projectile speed, your damage, and your increased damage, which is this mod here, which is desecrated. So it scales like your hits against enemies further than 6 meters. You can also get this for melee range. And also if you have mana per enemy killed, it's really nice to have it on a Quiver because it just scales with this. But so what do we want to look on a Quiver? Because you can spend like 1 Chaos on this, or you can spend 10 Divines on this. So let's just talk about real quick what you really need, because you don't need to overpay for this bow. So this one here I have, which is a 275 with 2 sockets. This was, I think, like 20 chaos or something like that. But you don't have to get one which is this expensive. I would highly recommend getting one with 2 sockets, because there's a lot on the market without sockets. So make sure you're buying one with 2 sockets. And then you want to make the mass, because you want to have increments of 50%, because only in increments of 50% you will get 1 extra level of projectile skills. Increases are getting rounded down, so you always need a full 50% to get 1 level of projectile skills. So let's look at the increases and the increments. So we have a 275 Widowhail. So we want to reach either 300 or 350. It depends on the skill points you have. 400% is almost unobtainable. I think it's technically possible, but it's not worth the investment. So I think 300 or 350% is a great target here. So minus 350. So let's see how that plays out. We have 275 on our Widowhail. Then if we look at our tree, we have 40 here from these equipped with Quiver nodes. So that is 315. Then we have another 12 here and another 12 here. So that is then 339. So we're missing 11%. So the rest we're going to do with the green jewels. So here's one with 6%. And here is one with 5%. So I'm exactly on 350%. So if you see, if I look at my skills, it's a level 30 spark. If I remove one of these jewels, it's going to become a level 29. If I put it back in, it's going to get a level 30 again. So I highly recommend looking at this because you don't want to play too many of these jewels because these jewels are not as good as the sapphire ones. Yes, you can get magnitude of ailments or shock, and you can get bonus from Quiver, but that's it. You can only get 2 useful stats pretty much on these. While on the blue jewels, you can get up to like 4, even more if you corrupt it. Because you can get skill effect duration, you can get magnitude of ailments, you can get maximum energy shield, and you can also get damage in the prefix. So the blue jewels are much, much better for your build than the green ones. So that's why I would try to, hit 350% with 2 of these ideally. So you would need a 274% if you want to do it like this. Obviously, if you want to just take 1 extra jewel, you could reduct like a 6%. If you want to play 4 jewels, you would just need like a 256 or something like that. So basically, just calculate it so you get to 350%. Or if you're on a budget and a little bit earlier, you just have to get to like 300%, and you're gonna be just fine. So let's talk about how to make a quiver. So you can either do this on a budget and almost pay nothing for this, or you can do this the way I do it to pay a little bit more, but it's still not going to be very expensive. So the very first thing is you want to have a base for your quiver. So as you can see, I already picked like a lot of these because I'm planning to do a crafting and corrupt these later, so I'm going to need a lot. But let's just pick one of these bases here. So what you want to have on your quiver is, if you are not on a budget, get a penetrating quiver because this comes with native pierce. And it has 100%, so we're going to increase it by 350%, so it's going to be 350% pierce. So it's going to basically, pierce 3 to 4 times. And this works. I know people are saying pierce is kept at 100%, but it's not true. I'm going to link you a link to a proof that this works in the video description, so just make sure to, not fall for this trap. So you can absolutely get 3 to 4 pierces with just having this quiver. That's why this quiver is significantly more expensive, because we have the pierce on it. If you are on a budget, you can literally use any quiver and you're not going to pay anything for these quivers. They are very, very cheap. But, let's just say we are using this quiver here. And now we want to basically put our desecrated mod on it, because this quiver is now plain. We could just use it like it is. It's not a bad quiver, right? But we want this mod here. Projectiles deal 20 to 30% increased damage with hits against enemies further than 6 meters. Because this, again, scales with our 350%, so this is a ridiculously strong modifier to have it on our quiver. And obviously we want to have projectile speed. So I recommend getting a quiver with 30% plus projectile speed and plus 2 level of all projectile skills. Everything else is a bonus, because the suffixes are nice if you have good suffixes, but it's definitely not required to have, something like this, which has, dexterity and mana per enemy killed, is obviously nice suffixes, but don't sweat it if you cannot get something. If you can get, one of those, it's going to be nice. If you can get mana per kill, it makes your map cruising very good, but you don't have to. But now let's just use this quiver here. So we want to desecrate it. So best thing for you is if this has an open prefix, because we gonna only have a prefix for desecration, because this one here is going to be a prefix. So if this has an open prefix, it's automatically gonna put a prefix on it, so we don't have to pay money for the omen. I'm gonna do this 2 times, 1 time with a full quiver and 1 time with an empty one. So I'm just gonna use 2 cheap ones here for now. Let's find one, this one here for example. So this one has full prefixes and suffixes, and this one has an open prefix, so you can see both cases. And again, if you don't want to do this on a penetrating quiver, you can use a cheap base, and I'm going to explain it. The process is going to be exactly the same. You're just going to change 1 gem, which I'm going to explain in a little bit. So if you want to do this on the cheap quiver, you're just going to need 1 different gem here. You're going to need the gem Ricochet 3, and let's see if I have one here. Where's my freaking gems? So, ricochet. I don't have it, so let's just make it. Rico. Gems. So you're just gonna use this one here. So yes, you have to take a damaging skill from your spark, but if you're on a budget, it's not gonna be an issue. And this gem basically gives you projectiles pierce all targets. Right, so this means they always pierce, and this is what you want to have on Spark. So let's start crafting our Quiver. So I have a screenshot here from PoE 2DB. As you can see, these are the two mods we want. So we either, depending what you want, if you want to do bossing, you want to have within 2 meters, right? If you want to do mapping, you want to have, you know, within 6 meters, more further away than 6 meters, because, you know, the mobs are always going to be far away. So as you can see, these are both prefix mods, and the one is this Amamu or whatever, and the other one is Kurgal. So we can basically force a mod of this type. So what we're going to do is now, we have our 2 Quiver bases, right? So the one is full, the other one has an open prefix, and now we're just going to purchase the omens we need. So first of all, you're going to, let's say, in my case, I want to have the Kurgal here, because I want to have the one 6 meter away, right? And you're just gonna buy the omen here for the black-blooded. If you want the other one here, you're just gonna buy the you know, whatever it's called, the Armor, whatever, the omen of the leech. And these are not very expensive, right? These are just, you know, these are basically free. And the other one, this is just, you know, it's like 1 exalt, so this doesn't cost. So we're gonna need these here. So for 2 quivers, we're just gonna need 2 of them. And then 1 quiver does not have an open prefix, so we need 1 more omen for this. And we're just gonna get the omen of Sinistra Necromancy. This is a little bit expensive, so you have to pay like 7 exalts for this right now, if you don't have an open prefix, because this will guarantee our desecration to only add prefix modifiers, because we don't want to destroy our suffixes. So let's just buy 1 of these. And that's already all the omens we need. We just need these 2 omens, and now we can desecrate them. So we obviously need the item to desecrate them. So if it's just for Quiver, we need the preserved jawbone here, right? So these are also super cheap. We can just, you know, get, you know, 3 for like, you know, 2 exalts. So not a big deal here. So let's pick them up. So now what we're going to do is, first of all, this one is the one with the open prefix, right? So we can just directly go for our omen of the black-blooded here, because we want to have the Kurgal one. And then we just, you know, put the jawbone on it. And as you can see, it's going to automatically put a prefix on it because the suffixes are already full. So this one here has full prefixes already. So we basically have to use our Sinistra Necromancy here. So we just activate it and we do the same thing. And now as you can see, it removed the prefix. So here you can technically lose the projectile speed, right? So it's like a, you know, 33% chance you're going to lose the projectile speed. And you're just going to start over with a new base. That's just the RNG, but you know, the odds that you're losing it are actually not that big. So now what's left is just unveiling the quivers. So we go to the Well of Souls. And we're just going to unveil them. And you know, this mod is going to be pretty much guaranteed. So let's put our first one in. Let's reveal it. And as you can see, there's our mod. This is also a very high roll, right? 27%. That's pretty nice. So this is what we want. And now we do our second one. And this is also, you know, guaranteed get this mod. So it's really easy to craft this quiver. You cannot really do anything wrong. And it's always going to work unless you're unlucky and you're going to remove the projectile speed prefix, which can happen. But, you know, it's just a 33% chance. And we don't need the other prefixes at all. So here's the second one. As you can see, the mod is guaranteed. We have the 29%. And there we're good to go. And this is our quiver. So if you compare this to mine has dexterity mana per enemy killed and 2134. So these are pretty much the same than mine. But so these are completely fine. You can roll with these quivers. You're gonna absolutely blast everything. But there's one more step we can do, and that's going to be corruption. And that's going to be in the next section. So to get a much stronger quiver even, you want to corrupt it. But this is something you're not going to do if you're on a budget, okay? So if we corrupt our quiver, this is the possible outcomes on corrupting a quiver, right? So we can have a couple of great results. 6% increased skill speed is the best thing we're going to be able to do. 30% increased damage is also pretty nuts because, again, you have to take into account it gets multiplied with 3.5. Then increased critical damage bonus might be nice if you're playing a Blood Mage. Mana per enemy killed is also a nice stat, but you know, it's not amazing. Pierce is okay, doesn't matter so much. This one does basically nothing. And mana is also nice. But here's the clear focus: increased damage and increased skill speed. We want to have one of those on our Quiver. If we can get one of those, that's going to be freaking nuts. So as you can see, we have a total of 9 ones, and you know, we have a 2 in 9 chance, so in one in a 4.5 chance. Let's say, you know, if we corrupt this with an Omen of Corruption, half of them going to be bricked. So we would technically need 9 quivers to get one of these stats, like theoretically, right? So you're going to have like a little bit of a journey if you want to get a corrupted quiver with one of these stats, but it's definitely possible and not very unlikely to do this. But yeah, if we want to corrupt it, I'm not going to do this now because, as I said, I'm going to do this later today. I have all these bases here, which are all going to complete. And then I'm going to corrupt them, like from the, you know, best to the worst. And then I'm just going to try to get one of these. But basically, that is what you're looking for. If you corrupt this and get one of these stats, it's going to significantly boost your damage. If you get 30% damage from a corruption, or let's just say you get 20% damage from a corruption, you take times 3.5. And, you know, that's going to be like whatever. I'm like bad at math, like 70% more damage or something like that. And if you have 30, obviously, it's also amazing. If you get 6% increased skill speed and you take that times 3.5, you're going to have like a 22% skill speed increase on the quiver. So that is going to be the final step, is going to be doing the corruption. But again, you're going to need a good amount of quivers. I cannot even guarantee that I will get one good quiver out of all of these, and it's also going to cost like 10 exalts per quiver for the Omen of Corruption. But this is definitely the final state. Again, I don't even have a corrupted quiver yet, but it's going to add substantial amounts of damage to your build. So how do you use my trade links? So all my guides come with trade links. You will either find them in the video description or in the written planner or in the written guide or wherever. You will find these trade links. So if you open a trade link, for example, this one is for focus. There's a couple of things you need to adjust. First of all, you need to adjust your level. So if you're just level 65, put your maximum level 65 here. And for armor pieces, you likely have to adjust the energy shield, because there will not be a focus with 250 energy shield on level 65. Also, if your budget is not very high, you might to adjust this energy shield value down a little bit. And then you have the buyout price. So you can basically put your budget here. So if you don't want to spend more than, you know, whatever, like let's say 2 chaos for focus, you can just put 2 and then you go for search. So now you just get it in a random order, and now comes the sorting by the weighted sum. So we have the weighted sum here. You just click on it, and now it's going to sort your focus by the weighted sum. So you're going to find the best focus for your budget. So you can see this has a weighted sum of 243, and it's just 1 chaos. So this overall looks pretty nice, right? Maximum mana, a lot of energy shield, care speed, mana regeneration rate, fire resistance. This is a pretty sick focus actually, and it's pretty underpriced. And you know, you just buy out the focus now. So it's really easy. Just go for the filter, adjust your energy shield, put your level, put your budget, buy all the items, and be happy.
carrying enough already. I'm carrying enough already. I need more time. I can't do that yet. Didn't break a sweat. Out of mana. I need more time. I can't do that yet.
What satisfied the abyss
Oh, thank
beckons
you.
you to fall.
Mana. I must travel light. I need more time. Die, Forgotten! Out of mana! I need more time.